donor dollars, how is that going in this economy? How are you effective as organizations out there trying to fundraise for your efforts?
A portion of our funding comes from the federal government, the HSSA grant, which is run through a program called the FIA, and that allows us to provide some matched savings dollars. A good portion of our funding also comes from major donors, foundations, and individual donors. So to the extent that we're impacted by the economy, we'd certainly be impacted more on the major donor side. And one of the things we've seen with our foundations is that actually for 2009 we're in pretty good shape, but because most of them have already committed, and the funds are already committed. But certainly for many of them there's been a degradation in the amount of funding that they can provide for 2010. So we're actually getting together contingency plans to make sure that we are not caught on the left foot for that. But I think it's much more of a 2010 problem, at least for us.
So Women's Initiative is kind of unique because so people can get involved with us and touch our clients, and because we have a pretty broad footprint. We have lots of individual donors. We also have foundation donors, same story, worried about 2010. But quite a bit of our funding was from banks, and many of them no longer exist, which is a little frustrating and hard to recover from. But I think that a lot of the focus that individual donors are taking today is really kind of filling in some of that. But our budget is $5 million, and because so much of what we do is training. We trained 3,000 women last year. We did 110 loans and 70 IDAs. Those are complements that really support the women who need those capital resources. But we are, we're all personnel. We'll never be profitable. It's not our model. It just doesn't. It's not part of the setup. I think we bring in 2% of our revenue, so earn revenue. So.
We also have a pretty diversified base for fundraising for ourselves. Same thing across the board, not really worried about 2009, 2010, a little more hazy. We have definitely seen decreases on some areas. I do think that...
Like Wachovia.
Right, places that don't exist anymore.
Gave us $125,000 last year.
I think that the good news, though, I think, is that some individuals, some foundations also recognize that because it's such a hard time for organizations like us, they're almost re-upping, right? They're putting in extra effort to support us because they recognize it's a difficult time for us. So as long as their portfolios are in a relatively healthy situation, and relative's a relative word, they're doing their best, and I think that we see some of that effort.